I am Marwan Cameron, and this is The Conduit. All right, y'all, welcome back. We've got a very special show for you today. As you can see, this is the largest show that I have ever done. I don't even know how many people are here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 on camera. And then we've got another 10 to 11 in the audience. This is the biggest podcast for The Conduit to date. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to have a serious conversation about renters. We know that there's a lot going on in our community and nationwide with the pandemic, and it's caused a lot of change, and it's affected people's lives in a lot of different ways. And a lot of times, I would say from a media standpoint, we kind of hear a lot from the residents, but we don't hear a lot from the landlords. So today, we're actually going to hear perspectives from the landlords, right? It's very important that all voices are heard, and that is the purpose of the Conduit, is to be kind of that two-way, right? And so to go beyond what we normally see in mainstream media. So that's what this is about. So today we're going to hear from our landlords here in Kitsap County. Then we will have Bremerton Housing Authority and Kitsap County with us today, all to have a discussion. Now, I don't even know if you can even imagine having all these people in the same place at one time, but that's what we have here today. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Deborah Jackson. How you doing there, Deborah?
Oh, how are you doing, Mr. Marwan?
I'm doing pretty good. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to let her kind of facilitate this, and she's going to introduce folks, and we're going to go through it now. You're going to talk with landlords, and then after that, we will go ahead and talk with Bremerton Housing Authority and the county. So I would just say, if someone wants to speak or interject, just kind of raise your hand, grab the mic, talk close into it, because if you're kind of far away, it kind of fades out, and it's important that your voices are heard, okay? So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and pass it on to you.
Thank you, Marwan. Today and everything, we're glad to have each and every one of you here. And we're here to support every one of the landlords. And we just want you to know we're here to listen to you and to hear your voice. We have Heather Sanders with West and Wheeler. We have Dawn Clay with Windermere. We have Tom Long, a private landlord. We have James Johnston, a private landlord. We have Larry Schultz, a private landlord. And I hope I said the last name right. I apologize. I never get it right. Then we also have Eli, the owner of the Midway Hotel. We have Nicole Williams with Kitsap Real Estate Group. And I hope I didn't miss anyone. I'm sorry, my favorite. I'm so sorry. We have Bill Mackham here. I apologize, as a private landlord. And Mr. Larry, can you please go ahead and say your last name for me?
My name?
Yes.
Schwab.
Mr. Larry Schwab. And he's a private landlord. So we're glad to have everyone coming here. And then we did have our concerned leaders in our community. We have KCR, one of the managers, and Matt Garrett. We also have Miss Sarah Van Cleve with the Bremerton Housing Authority. She's been there a long time. They have a new employee. I never met you before, but what is your name, ma'am?
Lori Reisinger.
Yes.
And I am the landlord liaison.
Okay, thank you. And then we have the director. She rocks. She's been moving mountains. And we have Jill Stanton in the house today from the Bremerton Housing Authority.
I'm my biggest fan.
Yes, I am. She's been rocking it. And also, what's so precious about this whole thing coming together, the person that juggles everything, takes all the heat from comments, and that we don't know, and that she goes through, because sometimes it's a lot of politics in it that we need to understand, that she has to deal with on a daily basis. You know what I'm saying? So we're here today for you can understand and ask her questions, and for she can clear the air and give you an understanding. With all thy getting, let's get an understanding. We have Miss Kirsten Jewell.
Thank you for the generous words.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and ask. There was a lot of concerns and with our landlords, and we had a landlord meeting before at Surviving Change, and I represent Surviving Change, eliminating self-perceived limitations, and also one of our programs is Hope 360. So we've had a landlord meeting, and our landlords had a lot of issues and concerns, and they felt that their voices weren't being heard, and no one's never asked them. You know what I'm saying? How they feel and the frustrations. So, something I was, sharing with Matt, telling him we are stronger together. You know what I'm saying? We help one another. You know what I'm saying? And we're stronger if we stand together. But one thing we're having is a miscommunication going on. So we're going to ask the landlords to express their issues and concerns and barriers. Then we're going to go ahead and have each one of you, those that know those answers, go ahead and ask them. So we're going to go ahead and start with Nicole Williams with Kitsap Real Estate Group.
I would say that the first question. So we all want to help our tenants that are truly struggling, right? All of us do. But there's a very small handful. We still want to save them. We still want to help them. They will not say anything. So we know that there are programs out there for assistance. Landlord, homeowner, environment, debt, haven't done anything. How do we get that assistance to those homeowners who are not eligible for our programs, because their own income is high enough, to qualify and get the assistance to save the roof and save the landlord debt? How do we do that without incentive pressure? Landlords have been asked to provide a service for free for many months with a promise that helps them away. There was blanket coverage protection. There was no solutions, such as requiring a tenant participate or be subject to certain, repercussions. How do we get that scenario right?
Definitely a concern that, that I've heard expressed, quite a bit. And I know there's been a lot of discussion at the state level, at the county level, at all levels. But unfortunately, the bottom line is we can't compel people to participate. We can't make people sign on the dotted line or participate in programs. And that's just part of the country that we live in, that we don't have the power to make people do things that they don't want to do. And I'm sorry, I wish it was different, but that's where we are. Yeah, I totally understand.
Basically, that was, there needs to be a little bit of balance scales and requirements that they participate for basic discussion. If something like that has been done, you would not be seeing people that are 12, 8, 9, 12 months behind the event, because they would have had to pay the consequences for their behavior.
I'm very,
Kristen,
very sympathetic to that, and I just want to make really clear.
Hold on,
that I work for the county
Kirsten.
government. I got to talk
Got
to the mic. Sorry.
because they can't hear you in the audience, so you really got to talk in the mic. So they're not hearing you online.
Totally understand.
So just go ahead and grab it forward. We don't want to miss that because other people have that question, so that's important.
Yeah, and it's a totally valid concern. I just want to make really clear that I work for the county government, and the county government didn't have anything to say about the moratorium. I mean, we are subject to the state government in the programs that they roll out, so although I'm super sympathetic, and I know that there were landlords who were talking with the governor's office when the moratorium was being developed, and they were expressing those same kinds of concerns that you're expressing. I can't speak to the moratorium or defend what was in it or not in it, because I didn't have any say over that particular policy. So I apologize. Yeah.
And I agree with that. But if they are a voucher holder, you can call the housing authority and we can have our staff reach out to them. So that's one of the reasons we just hired this position, the landlord liaison, to specifically work with voucher holders who are not cooperating, and also to support the landlords. So if they're not a voucher holder, we don't have very much we can do. But if they are, we can be a resource.
Can I add one thing? There is a small program that the state is offering. I think it's for landlords who have 4 or less units. The landlord can apply directly to the state and receive some assistance that way. That is through the Department of Commerce. On the bottom of our Kitsap Eviction Prevention Assistance webpage, in the bottom right corner, there's a link to that program, because we have heard that that is a concern, but it does have some restrictions around it.
And that is through the state, that program?
That is a program that you can apply to through the Department of Commerce, through the state. Yes. Uh-huh.
As far as I can go.
I just want
Should
to.
I can-
I don't know if this has changed, but one of the property managers that I work with, property manager, did state that she tried to apply for one of her properties that she manages, and it did have that code or that message at the end that it was only for private landlords. However, as of last week, I went on to that website and was able to apply for one of my owners. You are eligible up to $15,000. Of course, I had to provide the tenant ledger, the rental agreement. You do have to register and have a code number first, and then you put in that registration number. I received the confirmation that they received it, but of course, it doesn't help the credit issues of the owner at this point. But it is hope that possibly private owners can, even if they're going through property managers, may be eligible to receive funds.
Yeah, I wanted to add too, because that's we've heard that complaint a lot from landlords, and I'm Matthew Garrett. I'm the housing manager at Kitsap Community Resources, and we partner with Kitsap County to distribute the Kipa funds, the Kitsap Eviction Prevention Assistance Program. So we actually distribute the funds, so our navigators are actually processing applications. So we can't fully fund if a landlord just has a ledger, right? We can't do that because the funds target folks that are low income. They have certain vulnerability metrics they have to meet. So we can never fully get around that, but we can help. And one way that we do that is we have some funds set aside for when landlords are in that particular situation, when they're at their wit's end. You can, off the county website, or you can come to KCR and get, we call it a pre-application. It's how all tenants start to get rental assistance. And you can check, you're the landlord, and fill out as much as you can. If you can get the tenant to fill out the rest of it, and then if they just don't even want to come down, then you can come down and submit it. But if they're completely no contact, then you can fill as much as you can, and then our navigators will try. Like, we can at least assist you. We can't guarantee they'll get the results, but we at least can assist and knock on doors and say, hey, call and try to reach out to them, just as, you know, a courtesy to you all, but also to try to help get them assistance, right? And then it's someone calling them from KCR saying, hey, if you fill out some paperwork, we could potentially, you know, get you some funds. So like Kirsten said, we can't compel them, but we can definitely try to help you, at least have another person knocking and trying to get them to engage.
Did anyone else have a question? I have a question for Nicole. Nicole, when you attended your landlord association, if you don't mind, can I ask and share with us what was the outcome, and where does the landlords and how they feel, and what did they share their issues and concerns during that meeting?
They're very frustrated. The state level, but here, but they were just, short percent. They were outside by the service free from and they, got them down in the water area. So the folks had off and they got taken care of. Those people got taken care of. But the ones without cooperation, they're let down. There's also many situations that are dangerous, even. where we have like an apartment building, we have somebody engaging in a very dangerous situation, and the landlord can't, they're not allowed to do anything about it. But then, that's putting other good tenants in harm's way, subjecting them to things that they should not be subjected to. And we want to provide safe housing, and in some instances, the ability for us to do that.
Nicole, did the organization go ahead and discuss the moratorium and the eviction process? And where are most of the landlords at where are they at this point in time?
Where are they at as far as?
Their issues and concerns, and are they ready to evict? I know you said some new rules and regulations and guidelines came out. Can you go ahead and share that with us?
So the eviction moratorium, the bridge part of it, we will not be able to move forward with any evictions for anybody until there is an eviction prevention program in place in your county, or you find another outside county that will accept your case. And that's going to provide, you have to give some special notices, and navigate through the dispute resolution process. So it's going to be a much longer process. In the hope is that more people will be able to save their housing and work out, come to the table and work out agreements, instead of ending up in eviction court. But that is not, we're probably not looking at being able to move forward with any of that. My guess would be by the end of the year, by the time you navigate, the program gets put in place and then you navigate through that process. If you're holding on to somebody that's destroying your home, not paying their bills, you're going to have to hang on at least probably through the end of the year.
That is what you just said at the last part. That is something that some of our properties that our other property managers are also experiencing, that there seems to already be some decline and carelessness of the properties, because maybe the mentality of they're going to be evicted anyways. So, the homeowner not only has to go through the process of the eviction process itself, but then the cleanup of the damages of the property because of the mindset of, well, I'm not going to stay here anyway, so I'm going to, have parties and damage. And, that's a costly expense when it comes to turnover to find out future tenants. So there's a double-faced problem there, not only the eviction process, but the property damage that could possibly be happening currently.
This question is for you again, Nicole. During your meeting, did you discuss and landlords share about raising the rent? Because that seems to be an issue,
right?
Clients coming in.
There's been no ability to raise rents at all for roughly about a year and a half. And landlords' taxes are going up, insurance is going up, all the costs for landlords going up. Plus, they've been asked to carry this very significant burden of the pandemic. So if you are in business, all of these costs are a cost of doing business, and they're going to need to spread out that cost, and that means raising rents.
This question is for Matt with KCR. Now, are you finding that some landlords are raising the rent during this moratorium, and they're going ahead and asking for this rent on the TRAP application? So what is your process, and what are you doing about that when you see this, sir?
So yeah, we are seeing some landlords that are raising rents. We're seeing some letters. It's not a majority though, but we are seeing some that are raising rent. And what's difficult for us is we're not attorneys, right? And we're not the court system, so we can't adjudicate, but we can't break the moratorium or break the law. So we do find ourselves in a difficult situation of we're telling landlords that we actually can't pay these rent increases, especially if they're during the moratorium, because that was a violation of the moratorium. So we can only pay what they actually owe before the moratorium went into place, right? Because the moratorium effectively froze any rent increases. So that's what we're having those conversations with landlords and letting them know, and also trying to educate tenants. We definitely try to educate tenants as far as their rights, and also sometimes the landlords. Again, we really try to walk the line. We don't want to give any legal advice. We always try to point people in the right direction, but at the same time, we're limited to by what we can pay. And Kirsten, correct me if I'm wrong, but even right now, you can start to raise rent, but you still have to give a 60-day notice with the new. So effectively, no rents can even be raised until September 1st. But we are seeing, even this past few weeks, we've seen ledgers come in with rents that are already raised. So it is a difficult conversation. So yeah, I would definitely love to get the message out for landlords that we're sorry. We definitely hear that you're hurting, but we have to follow the guidance that we're getting. Our hands are really tied. It's not a decision we're making.
I'm definitely not advocating to do anything outside of what's allowed at all.
I think we're also really seeing, we're getting a lot of questions from landlords as well. And again, not in a position to give out legal advice and having to really struggle to come up with directions to point landlords in. I'm really hoping that here in the next couple of months, a lot of the legislation that was passed in this last session that affects the eviction process is being sorted out at the state level, how these different pieces of legislation fit in with each other in terms of the revised eviction process and what's required of landlords and what's required of tenants and who's involved. We're waiting for some kind of state interpretation of how those different pieces fit together so that we can help make sure that everybody in our community is aware of what this new process looks like, both landlords and tenants and the court and citizens and elected officials. We all need to get really familiar with what it's supposed to look like going forward. So I'm hoping, stay tuned for some kind of webinars and trainings and things like that so that we can all get much more familiar with how this is supposed to work.
And also, if it's a Section 8 voucher holder, the Housing Authority can, and we are processing rental increases. So many of our landlords don't know that, but if you're a landlord with a Section 8 tenant, you can contact us and we'll look at the fair market rents and we'll process the increase.
I really appreciate all of us being here and you guys taking the time out, all of you, to answer our questions. Ms. Heather, did you have any questions or have they been answered here?
I do. I think my main question is the process of once you've put in the applications for the tenants and it's all going through the process through you guys or whatever, the communication and when it's happening and getting the letters and knowing that the money's coming has been really just frustrating. I can't find another word for it. So we myself, whatever company doesn't mind waiting, knowing that it's coming. So if we get that promissory note or whatever, then we're fine with that, but it's the non-knowing is turning in an application to maybe 3 months ago online. Nobody knows what seems to be going on. Things change. So we start out doing this, and now there's this change happening. Now we do this again in a time window, and then for the tenants that are truly affected by it. It's it's okay, but when you have tenants that are just blatantly abusing this. It's frustrating more so when that's happening. But yes, that's, I guess, my question is how can we make that a more smooth or at least better communication so we as landlords know that money is coming. We understand it may take a while. This is a big pile of wet. Everyone's been trying to figure it out. But that's probably been my most frustrating part is just tell me when it's coming. I don't care when it tell me it's 30 days from now. Just tell me something other than nothing. Just tell me, hey, if it's coming yet, if you heard anything, and I got Deborah, so it's just when you and everyone feels like everybody just starts throwing fingers and nobody wants to answer that question. So that's all I got.
Matt, do you want to talk a little bit about your notification process and what we've talked about?
Yeah, so I thank you for that, and I totally understand that concern, and that's definitely, and you're not the only one that has shared some of those frustrations about communication, about understanding the process, as far as notifications for tenants, notifications for landlords. So that's definitely something we have been talking about, and that we've heard. So we hear that concern. I think that's valid. Just a little bit of context. So before the pandemic, our rent assistance budget floated yearly between 600, 800,000. And this year it's projected to be over 20 million. That is for any organization, that is a staggering size up in staff, in administration, in management, and it's a very overwhelming task. And my team has done a valiant job, but we just ask for a little bit of patience as we've built this program from a team that was pretty small. We've doubled in size, and we might even triple by the time in a few months. So I understand that there is frustrations, and because the kinks are being worked out as we go, because there was a big rush to get this program out. I often tell our staff and other members that we're building the ship as we're sailing it, right? And we just kind of keep plugging one hole to the next as fast as we can. But I will say this specific issue, we hopefully in the next 2 weeks are really rolling out a solution to it. So there's two processes. The first is there's a huge demand right now. So the wait list is about a month long. So any tenant just coming to KCR is probably going to wait a month or not longer at this point. So that's the first kind of lag and delay. Now, when people apply for assistance via that method, we're just starting. So this should be fully in effect in about a week, 2 weeks, but we're just starting to hand out letters saying that they've applied for assistance. So we were doing that upon request before, but now we are giving that. So then at least you all will know, hey, I'm on a wait list, right? There'll be our number on there. So if you want to call us, you can call and we can confirm that, because they also sign a release when they turn in their application. So we can talk with you about what's going on. And then we give that to the tenant themselves so they can have an actual physical copy, or if they apply electronically, they will have that as part of the completed application so that they can email that to you or print it out and show you on their cell phone. So that's the first piece that I hope will at least, hey, this person's on the wait list, right? It might take a while to get to them, but at least you know that they've applied. Now, being on the wait list doesn't mean that they still have to be eligible, right? Because they're just on a list. So a month goes by, then a navigator will actually qualify them for assistance. And that's the point at which, then if they're eligible, then we'll release payment if they have all their documents, right? There's a process to do that. The other process that we have, so that's kind of the standard come to KCR, is we work with all our wonderful Kipa outreach organizations. And Deborah mentioned hers, Surviving Change, Hope 360, and then Marwan, Gather Together to Grow Together. So that, because they're serving populations that have historically been underserved, we prioritize them. So when they hand us they don't go on the wait list, right? We are serving them right away. So that's a little different. So they're if they're handing us stuff, we won't know about until they turn it in. So in those situations, if you're working with an outreach organization, definitely you want to kind of contact the three of us, right? Because sometimes we might not know, but they're working with that client, they're gathering documentation, and they've done a fantastic job of speeding up the process for us, because they've essentially been gathering documentation and helping us out. So we're very grateful to them and the work that they're doing. But so that's, I think, maybe two of the areas where there might be some, hey, what's going on? So we're working on getting the letters out, and then also contacting the Kipa outreach organizations in addition to us. I think hopefully we'll clarify, hey, where is this person at in the process? Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, sorry. We have some wonderful. We have Mount Zion. We have Foundation for Homeless Poverty Management. We have Kayak Kitsap Immigrant Assistance Center. And is that all of them, Kirsten? They'll come. It'll come to me if I'm missing one.
So if we go through, like Weston Wheelers goes through Hope 360. And so when, from the time that the applications, like when they're all turned in, what's like the expectation time that we would either get a letter saying, hey, normally you guys, when I've worked in the past, it's 2 weeks, within 14 days you pay.
Yeah.
I understand everything's probably a little backlog, but
Yeah.
so with that, so when because I'll be honest, I've got a couple checks with absolutely no promissory note, no nothing.
Yeah.
It just showed up. But
Yeah.
I'm otherwise very happy. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like,
Where did this come from? Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll take that.
Yeah.
So, but but now we're still waiting.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of, and those are the tenants are like, well, what's going on?
Yeah.
Are we approved? Are we do?
Yeah.
So that's the confusion.
Sure.
So yeah, just approximately how long does it take to get the money? I guess I'm just going to get right to the point.
Sure. I hear you. And I wish I had a firm date. So I know, without getting too far in the weeds of our process, every tenant has to qualify, and there's certain documents that we need to get, right, in order to show that they qualify, because the funds just don't go to anyone, right? You have to be under 50% area median income. You have to have some vulnerability factors. You have to have financial loss because of COVID. And some of that can be self-declared, but some of that we need documentation. And so if the clients don't have their documentation, that can really extend, right? Because we can't process them till we have that documentation. So that's sometimes what the delay is even their name has been pulled off the wait list or been dropped off by a Kipa outreach organization. And we're just still waiting for them to get the documentation. We try to help them, and we do everything we can to try to help them get that. But sometimes if there's a delay, that's what's going on. Once we have actually qualified them, that's when the letter of pledge goes out. And I'm sorry, there was a few letters of pledge that we didn't get out in time. Yeah. But right now, that's the normal process is we send it out. We have it's called Panda Docs, but it's an electronic file transfer. So we, if the landlord wants to and has the email, we send that out. And that's the fastest way that we let landlords know, because then we send it to the landlord and to the tenant. I don't know if any of them seen them. You acknowledge that you get it, right? So there's an acknowledgement. And when that works, it works great. But yes, when the tenant is still behind, so I think that's sometimes when we can't guarantee, because we have to wait till the tenant gets all their documentation
So
in.
I guess that would be my last question on the matter would be, so how do we as landlords know whether or not the tenant is cooperating or not? Like, how would I know that if you guys have reached out and tried to get extra paperwork or whatever may be needed, or and maybe this doesn't necessarily apply to me because I'm working with Deborah, but just in general. So how does the landlord know? Like, hey, because nothing's been said, so I'm assuming all my landlords are working with, all my tenants, are working. But yeah.
I have something to add at the end.
Okay. Yeah, and that's a really good point. And thank you for bringing that up. I mean, so the first thing I'll say is if you are curious, and the tenants should have signed a release so we can talk with you all, you can always give us a call, right? And if they're with a navigator, then our front desk will give you the navigator's name, and then you can actually talk with the person that's on their case. And if we have a release, then we can give you updates. If they're still on the wait list, our front desk will tell you they're still on the wait list, right? So I think calling is, if you want to know an individual case, that's where it is. Now, you can if your Kipa outreach organization hasn't dropped them off or is still working, if they're trying to collect documents too, trying to help out, that would be another area where you would need to work with them. But I think what we're doing now is giving the letters out that they're on. Hopefully that will, you all know that they're on assistance, right? And if something's delayed, you can call us and we can let you know, hey, yeah, they're working. We're just trying to get this, and this, right? So we can give you an update there. And then obviously the letter of pledge should come ahead of the check. So, once they're qualified, our check process is about a month right now with the volume. So that's what I can, once they're qualified, then from the date of the letter of pledge, then I can say, a month. And if it's not a month, then please give us a call, because we need to figure out, if something, and checks sometimes get lost in the mail or wrong address or whatever it is, right? So if it's beyond that month, definitely want to let us know, and we can, if we need to stop the check and just give you a new one to pick up, or we have a variety of ways to handle that. Yeah.
All right, Kristen, before you jump in there, you're good? I'm good. You dropped the mic on that? All right, so we've got quite a few folks watching. Just want to send some shout outs there, and there are a couple questions also. So shout out to Tracy Flood, who's watching right now. Well Done Ministry asked, what is the average time on the wait list?
It keeps growing. So that's the problem. I know. Yeah, and I'm sorry I can't give firm answers, but we a few weeks ago we were kind of estimating 2 weeks. Now we're saying a month to a month and a half because it keeps growing, and we want to try to be realistic with folks. And trust me, our team is moving as fast as we can. We're really working long days, overtime. We're really trying to get it and trying to hire more folks. So yeah, if anyone's interested in working at KCR, go to our website. We have job opportunities. If you are interested in work, we would love to have you. So that I would say right now, a month and a half is the current, but I wouldn't be surprised as the demand continues to grow if we get into 2-month territory next month.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for that. First, I want to kind of give you folks an applause first off, because you kind of have your questions that I was going to ask you before you came on, and you're kind of taking it rapid fire cold. So I appreciate you for that very much. We've got another question in the chat. Is there a process to communicate status on whether pending processing or wait list? That is a question from our live viewers.
Yeah, and sorry, I feel like I'm hogging all the questions. So I guess I want to say thank you to everyone for your incredible patience with. We know we are far from perfect right now, and if we had all the resources in the world, we would definitely do things differently. But yeah, that's another issue that we've really wrestling with internally of where folks are at. So if you're a client out there and it really feels like it's lost in the abyss, please call. Our front desk staff have access to our database, and any application that comes to us, we track internally. So they will let you know, hey, you're on the wait list, right? They can let you know your current number and then let you know roughly where we're at, and say, hey, we're probably around this amount away. And if you're with a navigator, right, that's the step of you're off the wait list and someone's actually processing your paperwork. They should have reached out to you, and you can call them directly because that's the person that's assigned to your case. And so you do not have to go to the front desk. You can reach out to them directly, and they should be reaching out to you as well. So I think calling is probably the best way right now. I wish we were like Amazon Prime and you could just look it up online, but we're not there yet.
Can I add something, Marwan? Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to put this all in context too. Matt's been talking about how incredibly hard his staff has been working, and essentially this eviction prevention program was created from scratch in a really short amount of time. We didn't really do eviction prevention before last September, October, and very quickly had to figure out how to do this. We have federal regulations which dictate a lot about how this program operates. There was actually in the CARES Act and in the American Rescue Plan Act, very specific requirements for who's eligible for this program. So we are following federal rules around that. Even so, we have a little bit of statistics through the end of May. We were able to distribute almost $5 million has already gone out to landlords through the end of May, helping about 1,350 households so far. Most of those households are the poorest of our households in our community, less than 30% of area median income, almost 68% of them, or 30% or less of area median income. So Matt said this so beautifully, but we've just really appreciate everybody's patience. We're working really as fast as we can. And I know that KCR and Bremerton Housing Authority and our other distribution organization, Housing Kitsap, have worked really hard to hire more staff, develop new processes, get some electronic signaturing on board so it'd be easier for landlords to sign the paperwork, which speeds things up. The other thing that, if you have an opportunity to communicate with your tenants, the faster they can get their paperwork turned in, all their documentation, the less work that is for the navigator to try to bug them for it, the faster the whole thing speeds up. So when you go to the Kitsap Eviction Prevention Assistance website, it'll have a list of all the documentation that tenants need to have gathered before they can get their application approved. So we kind of encourage tenants to go there and say, this is what you're going to need to have to complete your application. And if you can turn in your application with all of that documentation, it'll go really fast. if we have to keep going back and forth and sign this and collect this and find that and do that, that's what makes it really, really, really slow down. And that's why our outreach organizations are such great partners, because they do a lot of that legwork. It's either the Kipa outreach organizations doing the legwork, or the Kitsap Community Resources Navigators, or the Bremerton Housing Authority, staff, or the Housing Kitsap staff. Somebody's got to do all that work to get the paperwork together. And so if you have an opportunity to communicate with your tenants, you can encourage them to get their documentation together quicker. That'll definitely speed things up.
We have online one of our other landlords that you haven't met. And Mr. Bob Levi, do you have a question, sir?
No, I've just been listening.
Is he talking?
He said he's just been listening.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I've just been listening.
Questions are being
Everything.
answered. And thank you for supporting us and tuning in.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
Does he have a question?
No, I'm good. I've just been listening to everything.
I was just definitely. Mr. Tom Long, do you have any questions?
What determines how many months rent are available? What determines how many months rent are available? Because I get differing amounts of rent.
So for this year, clients are eligible for what they owe up to 12 months. So right now our cap for clients that have come in this year, we are not going over 12 months. So if they owe beyond 12 months, that's the hard limit right now. Now it gets a little tricky, and I can go further in detail with you, if you want. But generally, what happens is we pay the back rent, and then we pay the current month plus 2 months forward in order to help stabilize them. But that can't go over 12. So if they owe 12 months arrears, then we wouldn't be able to go the 2 months forward. But if they owe 6 months back, then we would pay the 6 months back. We would pay, say, if they're applying this month in July, we would pay July, and then we'd pay August and September. So that would be for a total of 9 months to help stabilize. And the 2 months forward is also a recognition, right, of the difficulty of you all as landlords. As much as it is to stabilize the tenant, right, it's hopefully a good faith for landlords of 2 months ahead, right, to help. Now, I know if someone, and I know there are cases that are people behind longer than that. We do our best if they qualify for other programs, but typically the 12 months is the maximum. We can pay if there's utilities that are part of the rent. We can pay for those. We can pay for internet if that's also part of the rent. But sometimes if there's other fees like cable or stuff like that starts to kind of get out of what we can't pay for. But most of the time we've been able to cover the other fees that are included. But if there's specific questions, we would need to look at those on a case-by-case basis.
All right, so we have another question coming in from live. Well Done Ministry is asking, what are the minimal qualifications for the job Matt was talking about? Job descriptions, number of positions available, full or part-time, are there benefits?
Yeah, there is benefits. There is benefits. Yeah, I think we have some front desk positions open as well. Those are around 15 an hour, and we have some navigator positions at $17.90 an hour. And the minimum qualifications, I'll leave that to our website. But I'll say if you want to work and have any type of experience in social service, we would love to have you.
That is
so.
Awesome.
Please apply.
That's awesome. All right, we got another question from live. That is good information. Do you have any other demographics? And that is from Tracy Flood.
We are collecting some demographics. I don't have all of them in front of me. just a couple weeks, 2 weeks ago, we started posting some data summaries on the Kipa website. And so I encourage you to go to the Kipa website in the upper right corner. There's like a data summary where we talk about how much rent has been paid out so far to how many households, the average amount paid, the average number of months paid. And there's also a more robust data summary sheet that you can download. I've got it in front of me. It has a little bit more demographic information. We are also collecting information about the head of household race and ethnicity, and that information is also available on the webpage. There's definitely a strong racial equity component to this program, and we've been working really hard to make sure we're serving a lot of populations that have been historically underserved and maybe not had clear communication or understanding about this type of program. Our outreach partners are the awesome trusted messengers helping with that work. And so we are also reporting on sort of what our racial equity benchmarks are and targets and how we're doing and compared to those. So all that information is available on our website, which is www.kcowa.us/KEPA. I think Marwan's putting that in the chat.
I wanted to go ahead and share this with those who are watching and those here in our audience and also the tenants. I just wanted to let you know that when you do go ahead and apply, and you apply for so many months, that the arrears and the 2 months forward. Since sometimes the process, and Matt didn't share this with you, when we call you back, since sometimes it takes a month and a half to 2 months, that is kind of good in your tenant's favor and in your favor, because when they ask you to come back and to sign the paper, it's added on 2 more months because the process has taken longer. Correct, Matt? Yes. So I just wanted to let you know, sometimes when you have to come back and sign something again, they send it to you. If you go ahead and look and read what you're signing and everything, not to be condescending, but it's good to read what you are signing. Some of you don't, but God bless you. But nevertheless, if you look at it, this is why we're calling you back, because the process taken longer. And so you're getting a reward 2 months, and it's helping the tenant out as well. So we want you to understand that too, and to be knowledgeable of that.
Can I add on to that, Deborah?
Oh, yes, go right ahead.
Yeah, Deborah, thanks for bringing that up. That's a good point. So like if the delay was on us, like if they're either because the wait list, right, or the Kipa outreach partner, had reasons they're working with the tenant. So maybe you initially knew the tenant, like you knew your tenant applied back in March, right? But we, for a reason, the wait list just now got to them. We will process whenever we start working with them as the current month. So those months in between, like if the delay was because of either the process or an outreach partner, then whenever we process them and we get the application, that will be the current month. And then the 2 months forward would start from there. So you don't have to worry about the intermediate months. Now, if the tenant is the problem for if the tenant, if Deborah turns in an application this month, but the tenant doesn't get us our documentations till the following month, then that's on the tenant. So we don't then process them. The current month is when we start working with them. So that if the delay is on us, then we process them as the current date. But if the delay is on the tenant, this date still stays the same as when the initial application is turned in or pulled off the wait list.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Mr. James, do you have any questions?
Thank you for your assistance earlier in the year, because that really helped me out. It brought me to where I am today. But thank you.
You're welcome, sir. And can we go ahead and get the mic, because I believe we need to go ahead and hear from Mr. Bill Bacon of the great work that you're doing, Ms. Kirsten and KCR, because you need to hear that. I mean, he's come to the office and I wasn't there. And, this is our first time meeting, but we've done numerous phone conversations. And let him express that, please.
Well, Yeah, I'm a landlord. I have just a couple of tenants, but I have one that's, well, she's really struggling with income. You know, she's financially really hard up. And then I heard about this program, the Landlord Assistance Program. And it just, I don't know, it just looked like it might help me. And so I was introduced to Deborah, and she explained to me the process. And I was so thankful because she did all the paperwork. The process was really simple. She did all the documentation. She did all the submission. And I guess it was about 6 weeks later, maybe 5 or 6 weeks later, I got a check from, the KCR. And I'm telling you, it was so emotional. She was so thankful, and I was thankful because it included 3 months rent total. I actually adjusted her rent a little bit down when she was hurting the last few months, just to make it more comfortable for her to, do what she could. But I had to still, I still needed some rent because, I had a mortgage and I had, insurance and taxes and stuff. So when this check came, it was for the full amount for 3 months. It included all the utilities, the power and the water and the garbage and everything. And I'm telling you, she was so grateful and I was so appreciative. So I just want to thank you, Deborah, and everybody.
You're welcome, Mr. Bill. Yes.
Like, that's why we do this, right? I mean, thank you for sharing that story, because I have to tell you that, a lot of times Matt and all the folks here are toiling away in our offices, hoping that what we're doing is actually working and making a difference for people. And so thank you. It makes it worth it. Yeah.
I think situations like these can make people adversarial, and that's not the intention. And I don't think the county and Bremerton Housing Authority and KCR hears that, right? So I think that's important too. So we're trying to find ways to work together, right? It's not going to be perfect. It's hard, but we're going to try to find a way through. I want to appreciate or just say thank you to everyone that is, watching us live and typing in the chat. We've got a few more questions in here as they're coming in here. Let me just go ahead and find that. A Well Done Ministry says people are just as in need of jobs to be able to continue to pay their rent once they have received help to pay for their arrears. How do they plan to assist people beyond assisting with their rent? That's a good question if anyone wants to take that on. It's one of the things that I talk about all the time. Matt is getting the microphone ready.
Yeah, I'll definitely please help out, Kirsten. Yeah, I mean, I think a few things. Our primary focus, not anymore, but it was homelessness, right? So we have case managers. So when clients are homeless, our case managers work with them, and we try to have a holistic approach, whatever that includes. The clients dictate that as how we move forward. And if that includes employment, then we'll help out with employment. And KCR also does have an employment and training program as well that folks can enroll in separately. They don't have to be enrolled in this program. So those are some resources right there for sure. But this program is really designed to get people caught up on rent. We just don't have the bandwidth to help or case manage folks to find jobs. I know our wonderful outreach partner, I know Survive and Change Hope 360 connects people to employment, and they've actually helped some of our homeless clients. So I want to give them a big shout out of helping connect with employment. But the scope of this program is really catching people up on rent. And so I agree, those are significant issues. But we're just not equipped to handle it on a mass scale right now. But if folks are interested, kcr.org and our employment training program does some really good work, the community jobs program, and there's some really good opportunities there.
I believe, Matt, the WorkSource office, have they opened back up?
I don't think they're open to the public yet, but I think they will be soon. Yeah, I could be wrong, but I know the government offices are sort of slowly opening up, but they've definitely have resources available online.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just wanted to add too, I think your comment and your question is really important, because I think what it's pointing at is the fact that unfortunately we had a lot of people who are really struggling to pay the rent before the pandemic, and the pandemic made it worse. And this assistance isn't going to solve their underlying issue of not having enough income to be able to afford, the rent. And so, even after the pandemic is in our rearview mirror, we're still going to have to confront that as a society and as a community, that we have a lot of folks who just don't have income that is enough to pay for any rent. If you're on Social Security or disability, your check is not enough to afford the average rent or very many rents in the community. And we have an increasingly aging population and an increasing number of people who are on Social Security or disability or fixed incomes. And as their benefit checks have basically stayed stagnant, the cost of everything else has gone up. Rent, food, clothing, transportation, insurance, everything has gone up. And so they're struggling more and more and more as time goes on. I wish I had a good answer for that. I think job training and job opportunities is great and it's going to work well for some folks, but there's other folks who are not going to be able to get out of their challenging situation because they're not in a situation where they can get back to work because of a disability or they're retired or whatever it is. So yeah, we have a lot of challenges ahead of us as a community for sure.
All right, so more and more people are tuning in. It's getting hard to follow all this stuff. I will do the best I can. I apologize. Let me go back to a question back here. Rob Dent says, is the up to 12 months funding under a specific funding source? Because some have been denied because they have already used the program but had only received 3 months of help.
So I'm going to start and then I'll pass it off to Matt. Sorry, it's the Matt and Kirsten show. Sorry. So to your first question, there have been various different funding sources that have been granted to the county for eviction prevention. And we took a look at all the different eligibility, the different application forms, and came to the conclusion very quickly that it would be a lot to ask for somebody to have to fill out multiple different applications for different programs, all with different eligibility and paperwork requirements. So essentially, we created an overarching program called the Kitsap Eviction Prevention Assistance Program, or Kipa. And there's one pre-application for that. And if somebody fills out that pre-application, then they get screened for all of the different funding programs that support eviction prevention in the county and matched up with the best program for their particular situation and their particular needs. So we're really trying to make it easy for tenants and landlords to just have to fill out one pre-application, and then they're eligible for everything that they might, any of the programs that we might be funding it with. We are anticipating additional funding coming to the county in the fall through the American Rescue Plan. So there'll be more eviction prevention funding coming, and that will be rolled into the Kipa program. I think there was a question about being able to be served more than once. And, we definitely recognize that we have many, many more households that need assistance than we are able to process and have funding for. So we are trying to make sure that every household that applies and is eligible at least gets some funding before we go back and do seconds. It just seems like a fair process. Let's make sure everybody gets a little bit before we start having people come back and get a second helping of funding. And I know that that's hard and frustrating because there's so much challenge and so much need out there. But, we really want to make sure that as many people in many households as possible and as many landlords as possible get at least a little bit of assistance. Did you want?
No, I think that covered it on the policy side. I just want to say though too, although folks might be frustrated with that, and we definitely get that, and there's been some heartbreaking cases, but we are starting partnerships with Dispute Resolution Center, Kitsap Legal Services, and Northwest Justice Project to actually have a priority for folks that are actually in the eviction process. And so those guidelines we're still working on that, but there is that pathway that is being created. So yes, I know I've heard some heartbreaking stories of folks that, like Kirsten said, we're running up against, societal poverty issues, right? Where people need long-term rent assistance, and that this program isn't it. And that's very heartbreaking. We wish we could help all those folks, but we do have some other pathways that are going to be created as the eviction actually ramp up. So we'll be releasing more information as those get started.
And so this isn't super helpful, but there is 38 emergency housing vouchers in our community right now. And so those are, we have them now. We're going to start issuing them. Those have to be, they don't have to be on a waiting list. So that's the really great part about that program. But they do have to be referred to the Housing Solutions Center through our continuum of care organizations. So if you have particular people who would be successful with just having a voucher or even some services wrapped around that, now would be the time. Deborah Jackson knows all about it, so she would be a very good contact, or the housing authority.
Absolutely. All right. Ali Rodder says, thank you for sharing that meaningful story. I think that is your story there. Working together to problem solve is how our community is stronger. And we have Dominique Willis Hunter. She says, why are you guys using other organizations if KCR is doing the work? And then why can't those organizations do the work on their, own if KCR is overwhelmed by the work, and who is paying them? So I think that is for you, Matt.
Do you want to start?
Miss Deborah is over here saying we have to work together, and that is exactly been our county philosophy. We have a lot of partnerships and a lot of contracts to try to get this funding out as quickly as we can, and different organizations have different areas of expertise. We really are deeply reliant on our outreach organizations that we contract with to do a lot of the legwork. They're trusted messengers and communicators in the populations that they serve. One of the big challenges with a program like this is that the organizations that are distributing the funding have to be able to front a lot of the money. So KCR is paying checks to landlords and then turning around and getting reimbursed from the county, and then the county is turning around and getting reimbursed from the state. So many of our smaller organizations don't have the capacity to write hundreds of thousands of dollars of checks to the landlords and then have to wait a while to get reimbursed. And so we've tried to spread that around between our housing authorities and Kitsap Community Resources, and also, try to process those reimbursement requests as quickly as we can. But that's just not something that many of our outreach organizations are set up to do, and have that additional burden on them. So we're trying to kind of focus people's organizational strengths and what they're good at and where they have experience and what their capacity is, and share the load, and work together to try to make this program be as successful as possible.
Absolutely. All right. Ali Rodder says, exactly. This is why bigger than a universal voucher program that allows tenants to only spend 30% of their income on housing. So I think there's a question in there and maybe a statement. When will we see a universal voucher program that allows tenants to only spend 30% of their income on housing? That's the question.
That's a housing authority question.
That's the question we've been asking for a really long time. And so I don't have an answer for a date, but I will say that the focus on universal vouchers is there now in a way that has not been there since I've worked in housing. So many, many years. All of the advocacy groups are talking about it. I think with the current administration, there's definitely support behind that. So I think, I mean, this emergency voucher program is the first time we've had a program like this, that people don't have to be on a waiting list. And it's a very rich program, so we could pay up to 120% of fair market rents. It comes with money to help people with security deposits and moving expenses and several things like that it's just never happened before. So it's kind of, the focus is there and the time is there for us really as community members to advocate for the universal voucher program. Next week, one of the advocacy groups is spending an entire day with our legislators talking about the universal voucher program. I think that would be such an expensive program that it would be something that would roll out over years. And so I think with the emergency vouchers, that's a 10-year program, which I can't imagine them taking away after 10 years. But I think if we have success with that program, that will be the beginning of a permanent universal voucher program.
Awesome. Reverend Ellington says, seeing as how all of this was born out of the COVID plague, are these organizations tying in any way vaccinations to the rental assistance? And if so, how?
We are not tying people being able to receive assistance to getting vaccinated.
All right. Well, what I will say,
we are encouraging people to get vaccinated because that's how we make sure that nobody, fewer people get sick and have longer term disabilities and health issues. But we're not requiring it for as a condition of receiving assistance.
So what I will say is for Gather Together, Grow Together, we are part of the rental assistance program. So tying that together, we do provide free transportation for folks to complete their paperwork. And then in regards to the vaccine, we do the same thing there also. So if anyone wants the vaccine, we are providing free transportation that way. So if there's any kind of a tie, that's the way that we've just decided to try to, create that accessibility to folks in the community. So, but there is no, carrot or, a promise of housing if you get vaccinated. But you do just reach out to us, 360-373-3000. Deborah, I'm gonna give it back to you to continue it on.
Okay, thank you. I had a question for Eli. Did you have first? I would like you. Excuse me. Do you have any questions that you would like to ask?
No, so far, all my questions have been answered.
Okay, then I have a question that you should be asking. I apologize. This is towards Matt. Matt, can you explain to us and educate other hotel owners that are online? Ask them, tell them, what is the process of the hotel receiving fundings for their tenants, the process, and what are the, how do they qualify?
Yeah, so the hotels are a little tricky, and they do take a little bit more care. Essentially, it's very similar in the fact that the tenant still has to qualify for assistance, right? We can't just help any of your guests. Is they still have to go through the process. They have to they either go through a Kipa outreach organization or they come down to us directly. They can submit a pre-application, right? And they either go on the wait list or you go through an outreach organization. Now, the thing that's different is that we can't pay with this program for move-in costs, and that there's been a lot of confusion. So thank you, Deborah, for bringing this up. You're helping us out a lot. So if someone just comes in, we can't pay for them to move into a hotel, right? The standard protocol is that they need to be there at least for 2 weeks and have paid to get in those 2 weeks. And then the other piece of that is they need a long-term stay agreement. That could either be an agreement with you as the hotel, either you have that in writing or have given them permission to be a long-term guest, or we have a simple lease template if you would prefer to use that. But there needs to be some kind of acknowledgement that this is not a regular hotel guest, that they're staying there for long term, because really, this program's geared towards renters. And so that's where there needs to distinguish them from a regular hotel guest. if those conditions are met, then yeah. So we have helped folks with Midway. I know we've helped some of your folks. We've helped Quality Inn, Bremerton Inn. So there's been some hotels that we are working with, but it is definitely, if you're a hotel owner, please get in touch with us if you have questions, because it is a little bit different. It's possible it's a little bit different.
Matt, do you have a certain department, special department for the hotel owners to go ahead and call and work with at KCR?
We have a dedicated navigator, Miss D Hall, and she's awesome, and she takes care of most of the hotels. Unless if you're working with a Kipa outreach organization, then you all are point. But if it's a regular hotel and they come in, and then D would handle them. Yeah, and so and definitely for the hotel folks, please give us a call, and I can answer questions directly, or I can send you to Miss D. But typically, D would get involved once you actually have a client, right? That she's a navigator, so she would handle the case once they've already applied. But if there's general questions, please get in contact with me, and I can walk you through them.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
I'd like to say to our landlords, this has been a long process and a challenging process for Kirsten and her department over at the county, and then also for KCR. And it's been a challenge, but it's not that they don't love what they do and everything, because their job, and they want to help the tenants, help the community, help the landlords and everything. What we're asking that you go ahead and be patient with us and with them. And we all know how the government is. You know, something might change in 2 minutes. Somebody come up with a thought process and throw it out there. Then somebody say, oh, that didn't work. Let's change it back again. And sometimes that happens. So we just have to work with it. And as Pastor Manning always says of House of Refuge, we'll get through this. Is there any more questions? Mr. Larry, I haven't heard from you.
I have received one of your promises. But that's it. I only received one. I received quite a bit of money from you. I appreciate it. And I want to thank you.
I'm going to tell you about Mr. Larry. He thinks he owns Survive and Change at Hope 360. He comes in there, he said, you got any more money? Him and Mr. Bob Levi, I'm here to tell you. Yes, we love them so much. Mr. Tom Long, James Johnson, all of our landlords. But they are OGs. You know what I'm saying? So, and they feel so at home, you know, working with us. And we love working with them and, you know, with the hotels and stuff and our relationship. And we want our relationship that we have with Miss Dawn and all the landlords for you guys to have the same relationship too, because they belong to all of us. You know, it takes all of us together to make this successful, and it's so stressful. And some of us are overwhelmed, you know, and it takes us all together. So I just wanted to say that.
And I wanted to add my thanks as well, both as a member of our community and as somebody who works, you know, in the Housing and Homelessness Division. By the very virtue of the fact that your tenants are eligible for this program, that means that you're renting to some of the very poorest people in our community. And I really, really appreciate that. They need a place to live too. And I'm genuinely grateful that those folks are able to have shelter and housing because you're willing to rent to them and willing to be part of our community. So just wanted to express my gratitude for that.
Yeah, and I want to say that as well. Like, you know, we are so appreciative. And if you are a landlord that has a Section 8 client in your housing and you're experiencing issues, we don't want to be difficult to work with. So, and we're not going to be difficult to work with, and we will pay, you know, and if there's a change in income, we want to know that, even if it's the landlord that has to let us know. So if you're struggling and you have Section 8, please call us and we will help.
Absolutely. We're going to take these last few questions online, and then we'll transition and kind of talk to you folks directly, if that's okay, and wrap up. So Reverend Ellington says, is this a one-off, or will there be another powwow like this? If there will be another gathering, will our elected officials be invited? Were they invited this time? I will say no, they weren't invited this time. Would you guys be willing to do this again at some point in time in the future? All right. So I think the collective heads are nodding. And then Dominic Willis Hunter says, if there is no Section 8 housing available in Kitsap County, why does Section 8 get taken away from the person looking for it?
That is a good question. I think things are working differently than maybe they have in the past. We have regulations, and so we have the vouchers, they expire, but we have some control over that, and we are in process of making sure that we are as lenient as we can because we know people are having trouble finding housing. So if you have a voucher and you have not been successful in finding housing, we have a brand new position. She's sitting right next to me, dedicated to helping you. And we can extend those deadlines. Yeah.
I'm also a private landlord, but I'm also a property manager for Windermere. And I get calls often for people who talk about they have a voucher. And sometimes they'll say, do you accept Section 8? And because this is a podcast, I think it's very important to acknowledge that a source of income is a protected class. And so landlords, you have to accept Section 8 if they qualify for your rentals. And so that's discouraging when I hear that people, and they do, in the past, maybe there's exceptions now or extension of those limits of time frame, but I have managed homes with Section 8 voucher recipients, and they have been some of my very best of tenants. And so it's unfortunate that I'm still hearing from some of the general public out there that private landlords are telling them that, sorry, I don't accept that. So just educationally, it is a protected class and we are required to accept them. And it would be great if maybe there's more opportunity, or I should say quickness for the inspection process, because obviously to be able to accept a voucher, the home has to be inspected first by a housing authority person. So if that timeline will speed up, then they'll be able to receive that house because they're in competition with somebody else who doesn't have to wait for that inspection process. So hopefully there's those resources as well to help those Section 8 recipients.
I'd like to highlight another program that's a state program. It's called the Landlord Mitigation Fund. And it is a fund that landlords can apply to in advance of renting. They can get, I think it's up to $1,500 to bring their unit up to a certain standard. And then they can also get reimbursed for any damages up to $5,000 if they are renting to a tenant that's receiving rental assistance through one of our social service organizations. So it's intended to be like a little bit of an extra insurance policy if you're concerned that maybe your tenant who is applying is on rental assistance, and that gives you a little bit of extra concern about getting the unit up to standard or about, some potential damages. That is a very successful state program, and I would highly encourage landlords to take advantage of it. And you can get more information on the Department of Commerce website at the state.
And just real quick also, so there's the emergency housing vouchers, but also we have regular vouchers on the street right now. And so we have set aside a pot of money to help with security deposits for those vouchers. So if you get somebody coming to your housing and that's one of the struggles, we have money to cover that right now.
All right, that is awesome. If a potential tenant comes across that experience and they hear their landlord says we don't take Section 8, is there any recourse? Where would they go to try to get help?
So they can definitely call the housing authority, and then we refer them to Northwest Justice, and they are keeping track for me for the number of landlords that have turned people away for income discrimination. So awesome. We want to know about that, not to get the landlord in trouble, but to educate the landlord and to increase the number of units. So please contact the housing authority.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you for that. I think that's really important. Thank you, Chad. So we'll go ahead and transition to the county, Bremerton Housing Authority, and KCR. As we ask these questions, I'll ask you to think of what you want to share with the audience, kind of their takeaways. And I'll start with the Bremerton Housing Authority, because we were talking about the voucher program. So one of the questions was just speak about the voucher program in whole. Do you think that you've covered that, or is there a few other things that you wanted to add there?
So I'll just add that the Bremerton Housing Authority, we administer for Housing Kitsap and for Bremerton Housing Authority. And for many years in our community, our vouchers have gone underutilized. So for example, we have about 1,896 vouchers, and consistently for many years, we have only been funded to issue about 1,300 to 1,500. We currently have more funding than we've ever had, not enough to cover the 600, but we have a strategy in place right now where we are going to go ahead and try to issue to our full capacity. Now, the issue will be finding housing. So we need landlords, we need more housing, and however we can help. I mean, please don't be afraid to work with the Housing Authority, because, we are here to help you. We're here to help the people that need the housing, but we also really want to support our landlords and be in good partnerships. But it's a big undertaking, but we've taken it on.
Perfect. What is the best way for those who are looking for housing assistance to seek help?
So the Bremerton Housing Authority is a partner with the Housing Solution Center. So we primarily refer everybody to them. They may ultimately be referred back to us, but we try really hard to be a good partner for the Housing Solution Center. I think it's a great organization. And of course, Matt's sitting right next to me. And definitely visit the BHA website, because that's where we put out our information when our wait lists are open. The Housing Choice Voucher wait list always opens in March. So it will be opened again in March of 2022. But that's where we would list any programs that we have waiting lists that are open for.
So, I've had the pleasure of serving. I'm a native to Kitsap County. I've lived here my entire life. I grew up on Bainbridge Island and live in North Kitsap now. And it's been my pleasure to serve our community for a long time now. And I remember once upon a time, there was a time when if you were struggling with housing, you had to go door to door to every organization in our community that had any kind of housing assistance and try to get on their waiting list and figure out if you qualified. And you could be on many different waiting lists at the same time. It was very frustrating. We didn't really have a sense of how many people were in need because people were on multiple waiting lists. The waiting lists were full of people who'd already gotten help somewhere else. It was quite a big challenge, especially for people who were in a housing crisis. So we were able to get together with all of our housing providers and social service organizations about 10 years ago and dream up a different way to do it and try to figure out, let's make this a little easier for everybody in our community. And out of those conversations with our community members and our nonprofits, we came up with this idea to have a first stop place for anybody who's having a hard time with housing. And they can have an intake, an assessment, and then a referral out to the programs for which they're eligible. And all of the shelters get referrals from them. Many of our housing programs get referrals to them. And they can make sure that when somebody comes in with a housing issue, they can also talk to them about some of the other things that might be going on that they're struggling with and get referrals for job assistance and benefits that they might not qualify for, and energy assistance, and all the different things that may be part of what's happening for them. And we were fortunate enough to find an awesome partner in Kitsap Community Resources. And we have been working with Kitsap Community Resources to operate this program for the last 7 years now. And that program is called the Housing Solution Center. And I'm going to turn it over to Matt Garrett, who is very, very involved with the Housing Solution Center, to give you just a little bit more information about it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, thank you, Sarah and Kirsten. So it's a partnership between all of us that makes it work for sure. And Jessica Martin is actually the manager of the Housing Solutions Center. So definitely want to give you that piece of information. But I mean, Kirsten did a great job of summing it up. You know, it's the initial blast. The thing I'll just say is, yes, especially if you're homeless, right? It's really, the kind of number one priority is serving homeless folks. So come there, they'll do shelter referrals, any of our housing programs that focus primarily on homeless people that are experiencing homeless. That is the way to get on those programs. And most of our grants mandate that you can't go any other way. You have to go through coordinated entry. And so that's really the starting point. Now, we will definitely let you know about other resources like Bremerton Housing Authority, but you can go straight onto their website to also get on those wait lists. That's not exclusively through us. We'll point you in the right direction, but definitely all our navigators and Jessica's team does a fantastic job of knowing what's available. So it's always a good place to start, even if you end up applying with another agency.
Absolutely. Probably a good idea for landlords to know about this information also, in case their tenants get into trouble. They know some places that they can refer them to get help. What are some items they will want to gather to help the process move more smoothly? There's typically some same documentation that they may need. What kind of things should they be, trying to get in order to cut down that time of receiving services?
Yeah, a really good question. Getting document ready, as Sarah and I've worked with folks, is not an easy thing, and that's a good amount of time of what our case managers do of just getting people ready for programs, and it's no joke. And Sarah, I don't know if you'd agree, but most of those guidelines don't come from us, right? Those are higher up than us that we have to follow, and we understand it's annoying. We know it's annoying because we a lot of times help clients get it, so we walk with clients through the process. So we understand. I've had case managers sit in Social Security lines, battle the Social Security website, right? Work with the unemployment office, so we understand. But that being said, I think generally the good things to have are updated pay stubs or your income, right? Most programs are income, whether that's a homeless program, whether that's Kipa, whether that's Bremerton Housing Authority subsidized programs, you have to have current income. So typically it's past 2 months or a tax return. Those documents are really handy to have. Unemployment letters, Social Security letters, absolutely. Having birth certificates, I know, especially for Bremerton Housing Authority programs, are really essential. So you can always get a jump by requesting those. And IDs are also really, really helpful, although not necessarily required for all. I'm speaking generally here. Each program has a little bit different. And then for homeless service programs, so if you are living in a car or if you're at the shelter, typically we have to have a verification of homelessness. So that's another thing you can get a jump on by asking whatever agency you're working with, whether that's a Kipa outreach organization that can verify you're homeless, whether that's a pastor. There's a lot of different folks that can verify that if they know the situation. And that always is very helpful because we typically have to hunt that down as well. Do you want to add to that, Sarah?
Yeah, just so for both agencies, we have to prove you are who you are. So IDs, birth certificates for the kids because they don't normally have ID. So and it is a battle with the Social Security office. Technically, we aren't required or even allowed to ask for the income verification, but HUD wants the income verification. So it's a lot of back and forth, and it's difficult for the applicants. They're already in crisis, and then they've been asked to jump through all these hoops, and that can be a real, excuse my language, but a real turnoff, and it can really make people not engage. And I've noticed that with the rental assistance program. The more we ask for information because we have these regulations, it's offsetting for the resident. And I've seen a lot of that with the rental assistance programs that BHA is running.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Earlier, there was a mention about those living on fixed income and their inability to afford the ever increasing rent in this county. Can someone speak a bit more in detail about what is and what plans are to be developed to assist them?
Joel and I are looking at each other going, I wish we had good answers. Yeah, I mean, I wish we had good answers for that. It's a problem that has been around for as long as I've been doing this, but we're definitely seeing an increase. One thing I think is really important for a lot of folks to think about and understand is that we are in a classic supply and demand economics lesson. We are living this lesson right now. And that lesson is that we don't have adequate supply of housing. And that causes the prices to go up and the demand to go up. And so that essentially creates a situation where people who have more opportunity, more privilege, more means are better able to compete for the limited resource of housing. And what happens is the folks who are poorer, more vulnerable, less able to navigate systems are the ones who are getting squeezed out of the bottom. When you have such a housing shortage, people are able to and forced to what we call rent down, which means they pay less than maybe they can really afford because that's all there is available in the housing market. And when they're renting down, they're competing with folks for whom that is the most that they can afford in the market. And so those folks who are the poorest are getting pushed out. And that's why we're seeing an increase in homelessness. It's really a straight up economic supply and demand problem. And so the best thing that we can do is try to produce more units of rental housing. There's a huge boom in home ownership housing right now, which is awesome. And that's a great kind of economic generator for a lot of jobs. And so there's a lot of really good things about that. But if we want to really try to get at that disparity between incomes and the cost of housing, what we need is a lot more rental units, and particularly rental units that are affordable. If we could prioritize production of studio apartments, shared housing situations, small rentals. There's a lot of people who are struggling right now who would be really happy to just have a room and a bathroom and a kitchenette. And that's all they really need. And that would be great housing for their situation. And if we could have a lot of production of that, I think we could get ourselves out of this situation. But it's hard. It's a hard kind of housing to develop because it's not necessarily as profitable as developing luxury apartments. And so again, the market is driving what's getting produced, and that's just the system that we live in, right? There's nobody's fault. That's just our capitalist economic driver system. So we're working hard at the county level to try to make funding available for production of affordable housing. We're, trying to look at what the demand is going to be for housing at different income levels over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. How do we address changes in zoning and code that allow for more development of affordable housing? How do we work more closely with landlords to make sure that it's not a hardship for them to rent to low-income tenants? There's all kinds of different things that we have to do, and there's no one easy, there's no silver bullet. It's the silver buckshot. We got to have a lot of different solutions because we're in a really, really challenging deficit situation. I call it the musical chairs problem. There's not enough chairs for everybody. There's not enough housing for everybody. So even if we get people housed through Section 8 vouchers, that's awesome, but it means somebody else isn't going to get a housing unit, and what's going to happen to that person? They're not going to get a chair. So it's a really big challenge, and it's a big challenge for every community in Washington State. I have colleagues all across the state who are having this exact same struggles, and even across our country, not in every part of the country, but in a lot of parts of the country, this is a really big challenge, especially when a lot of people want to move to our community. And so we're seeing increase in population in Kitsap, some housing production, but it's not keeping up with the increase in population. So we're definitely struggling with the musical chairs.
So that said, can any of you speak to any information that you may have on the developments that are happening in the area for affordable housing units? or coming soon, hopefully coming soon?
Well, so the ones that I'm aware of, I'm pretty new to the community, but we have Pendleton Place that is Kitsap Peninsula Mental Health Services, and they're working with the Bremerton Housing Authority. So that's a 72 unit building that's going to be, it should be ready to go in March of 2022. So that's coming on board. In Mason County, there's a little project. It's a tiny home village for veterans, and that's 30 units. Is that right? 30 units. And that will also be a voucher program. So there will be project-based vouchers in that. And then just, we're working with some very hopeful developers that want to develop some low-income housing that will be supported by project-based vouchers. So to the extent that that's successful, I don't really know right now, but I will say that we have a real focus on if there are nonprofits or other organizations that want to develop housing and need the ongoing operating support of a project-based voucher, we have capacity to do that, and we are very willing to do that.
And just to add, if you happen to be a housing developer and you're listening to this podcast, the county currently has funding opportunity available right now for development of low-income housing, acquisition and rehab of low-income housing. So you should go over to the Kitsap County Human Services Department webpage and look for the affordable housing funding opportunities, and check it out, because there is money available to help with that.
All right, that is awesome. Go ahead, Matt.
In case we have a small project of 9 units that's going up in Bremerton. So we're excited about that. But again, what Kirsten is saying, 9 units compared to what we need, right? And I know all these projects, are so needed, and we recognize that. So we're trying, but we also recognize that it's not enough. But it will help.
Yeah, true story. And if you're one of the 9, then that's very impactful for you, right? So it does all matter for sure. One final question before we get final thoughts. And this is kind of building off of the statement from Windermere. Can you just spell any misnomers or stereotypes that tenants are dirty, destructive, late with their rent, have other people living in the home? Obviously, those experiences exist that our landlords can speak to, but sometimes they get painted with a very broad brush. So can you speak to that? Kind of build on what she was speaking.
Yeah,
to
and that is, that happens, but it's really not the norm. That's not at all what we usually experience. Most of our recipients of vouchers, they don't want to lose that voucher. That is their lifeline. Housing is the number one thing. So they're going to not do those things. And I think if those things are happening, you can call us and we'll help. We have resources. We have a lot of partnerships that offer services that will step in to help people that are struggling and doing, damage to your units or anything like that. Also, like I said, we have more funding now than we've ever had. I think that's going to continue. So we might be able to help with some of that if it does happen. But really, it is not the norm. It is definitely not the norm. We don't get those type of complaints very often from our landlords. So I would just say, we could just use your help. If you have our voucher recipients living in your housing and you have good experiences, the more we can share that in the community, I think that would be helpful.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I do understand landlord hesitation, especially with formerly homeless clients. And we do have clients that are homeless because they've had issue with prior landlords, right? They might have been evicted before. So we definitely understand that you all are taking a risk. And I know they were thanking you earlier. Definitely, we wouldn't be able to house most of our homeless community without your help. There's only so many units we have that are dedicated for formerly homeless households. That being said, we try to be pretty upfront, right? If we have a client, especially if they've experienced homeless or chronic homelessness, we try to let you know, hey, this is the case. this is what's going on. And the case manager, as long as they're around, we have a variety of different programs, but especially for our really vulnerable clients, the case managers are there for a while, and they're in their job description is landlord mediation, meaning they're there to help resolve issues between you and the tenant. And we also kind of recognize that with the risk. And so a lot of our programs, we can pay first, last, and deposit, right? So there's money up front, and then also help with get you signed up for and ready for the landlord mitigation if stuff does go wrong. So we do really want to try to be good partners, because there's a few of you that have housed some tenants that we recognize are a big risk, and sometimes things do go bad, and we want to try to help you, recoup as much cost as possible. But like Jill said, the majority of actually do go right. We always remember the ones that go wrong, right? Because when they go wrong, they go wrong spectacularly, but it's actually the minority that happens.
Well, and so for all these awesome landlords here, they know where the resources are, they know how to tap in. But for the potential ones out here, if there are some issues, it is the landlord, what was the fund called? Mitigation fund. Okay. And so they can call Bremerton Housing Authority, and they can get the information on how to go through that process. Okay. All right. So we have no more on the chat. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up, and just want to get the final thoughts. And I'll start with you, Deborah, because you are super important here. And we'll just kind of go around and just talk about our final thoughts, and we'll wrap up.
First and foremost, I want to say to the landlords, I hope you heard them, especially when Miss Jill was stating about how you can get help to bring your apartments, your property up to standard, so it does qualify for Section 8 voucher. Because some of you do have properties that possibly you can partner with them, and then let's bring them up to standard and everything, and we can offer them to an individual that has a voucher program. So I'm really putting that out there. Some of you know why. So I just want you to know that that is available to you. So I just want you to take heed of that. And then for those that are looking for a job, right now there are jobs out there. Clean Impressions. David Young is always looking for employees. Daryl Riley is a second chance person of hiring individuals with no experience and giving them experience. So there are many, many jobs, and people come through. Deborah, I'm hiring. Can you send someone? The problem that I've heard from many other employers, that they can't keep people on the job. They don't want to work. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just telling you, jobs are out there. I had the opportunity last year to go ahead and partner with NAPSA and John Hornbrook, and was able to hire over 30 people of color jobs with NAPSA out Keyport and out Bangor, 2 years ago. So they came to me, and so we were able to get those mothers, and they were looking for women of color. And so that was a project that just happened spontaneously. And within 30 days, they had the job. They didn't have to jump through the hoops. They fixed it where they can, they still did the security check, but they, got the job, didn't have to go and apply online. But anyway, nevertheless, I just want to say, I would like today to come out of this, you guys give each other, all you landlords, KCR, Bremerton Housing Authority, you share information, give your business cards. We can't fix our community unless we are together as one, and then trust in one another. You know what I'm saying? If something occurs, we can fix it. You know what I'm saying? You have all those units. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's a good connect. Definitely, that's a good connect. And the rest of our landlords. So I just want us to connect, and we can do this if we're together. And that's all I have to say. That's what I'm about ready to cry. Oh my God. Because they know I believe in this. I really strongly do. I'm a Bremertonian. I'm from Bremerton, West High Wildcat, Crown Miss Spirit. I was the Wildcat. Can you not tell? Anyway, I just want to thank everybody for coming. And then we did not recognize our guest here. tenants, community members, they are here also in the audience. So we want to thank them for coming because they want to learn. And, you know, telephone, telegraph, tell a person. You know what I'm saying? That's how information is out there. So this is why I invited them. Thank you for coming. Anyone else would like to say something?
I'll just share with you all my personal motto, which is everybody does better when everybody does better.
I don't think I can follow that. So, but I do want to say this, that Miss Jackson over here, I've really never met anybody like her who calls me up and says, I've got the paperwork. And I say, okay, come on down. And she says, I'll be right there. And she's right there. So that is what we need to make this successful, is every one of us to be like that.
So I just wanted to mention about the voucher program and everything. And speaking to the inspection process, this is unprecedented times, and HUD has really loosened the reins. And with our new executive director at the helm, she's like, loosen the reins. And we are going to pull out every stop that we possibly can. We want to pay the most we can on behalf of a family. We want inspections to go fast. We want them to pass on the first time. And there are lots of waivers out there that we are adopting. And we need these waivers to be successful, because we need to go back to HUD and say, you finally loosened the reins and we made a difference. So we need your landlords to engage in our programs so that we can show HUD they're on the right path. Because for the Bremerton Housing Authority and a lot of other housing authorities, that's what HUD needs to hear. You know, these emergency vouchers are a step in the right direction, and we need to keep HUD marching in the right direction. And it's going to happen if the landlords work with us. And then I did want to give a plug. We are doing rental assistance. We're not as big as Matt, but we do have funds. We serve people in the city of Bremerton. So if you have tenants or units in the city of Bremerton, you can go to our website and it's all on the front page on who to contact, but we do have funds available. So please tap us for that. And thanks for coming tonight. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, just want to express a lot of gratitude. So thank you, landlords, and thank you for your patience with us as we roll this out. I'll definitely, you can reach out to myself directly if you have issues, and we can try to resolve those. But really, thank you, and because of the partnership, there's a lot of folks that are staying housed or homeless folks that are housed because of your work, and you definitely are not as much of a recognized resource in that. So definitely thank you. And the official list of the Kipa outreach partners, I got that, so I wanted to recognize those folks. So Kitsap Immigrant Assistance Center, and Annika is one of our big contacts over there, and she does great work. And then Foundation for Homeless Poverty Management, that's Diana. She's amazing. Mount Zion, that's the Partnership for Youth Achievement. That's Pastor Johnson. And then we have Gather, Gather, Grow Together, Marwan. Surviving Change, Hope 360, of course, is Deborah. And definitely thank you to all of you, because we would not be anywhere close to achieving our racial equity goals. What's that? In Coffee Oasis, thank you. Yeah, Coffee Oasis, yeah. But we would not be anywhere close to achieving our racial equity goals without you all. So thank you for your really, really good work.
You're welcome, Matt. I'd like to say one thing to our landlords. You have tenants that are struggling. So this is what a partnership is. Stay in contact with KCR, Bremerton Housing Authority. When those vouchers arise and they come up, you need to encourage or remind your tenants to apply, because they just did 600 vouchers and they're sending out 50 a week. That would relieve pressure off you, and your tenant struggling to pay that rent, you struggling to pay your mortgage. So keep your ears open, partner with them, encourage, get some literacy. When it comes, say, have me on your email list. Then let your tenants know. It's all about conversation, communication, and working together. I'm done.
Well, we want to hear from our landlords if they want to have any final thoughts also.
Well, I'm just glad I came as a landlord. I've learned a lot, and I've met some nice people, and yeah, I'm just glad I came. Learned a lot.
In the back there.
Yeah, no, thank you for inviting me, Deborah. I just really opened my eyes to on the work you guys have done. And I don't know if I'm speaking for everyone, but every time I call Deborah or Matt or anybody at the KCR, it was just, complaining and anxiousness and wondering when the checks are coming. And so I'd like to take the time today to thank you guys.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say there's only 5 of us here. We have to get the word out some more. There are thousands of other landlords that I don't even think know this program exists or these programs.
Yeah, we had 10 landlords here today. We had 10.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, 10
If
of
you
us.
have ideas for how to get the word out more, please let us know. We are
I'll
happy
look into
to help spread the word, but we don't know who all the landlords are. So. Yeah.
Have to register and get a license for.
Right.
So that's a whole list of resources.
Well,
I was gonna
the
say-
Regional Landlord Association. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Tom.
No, you go ahead. You started.
I was just thinking about the Landlord Association. I did give some information to Nicole. I don't know if she's an officer, but she does belong to the Landlord Association. So if the Bremerton Housing Authority and KCR could go ahead and connect with them, build a relation with them, attend one of their meetings. And they're doing them Zoom right now, and get the information out there and then connect that way as well. Go ahead, Mr. Tom.
Yeah, I was going to say, this has been very educational just to find out all the programs that are out here, things that I didn't even know about. And thank you, Deborah, for putting this all together and all the help you've given me.
Oh, you're welcome, sir.
Yeah, go ahead and jump in.
I'm Daniel. I don't know introduce myself to anybody, but I just want to say a couple things. There is a lot of anxiety right now going on between anxiety that you guys are experiencing, landlords too. It's mutual. There are tenants that actually do want to be assisted so they can continue to be productive and pay their own rent. I'm one of them. I have been being a liaison for KCR, and I can leave my number with all of you. And if you guys need, if you guys have tenants that can't make it to fill out the application, or can't make it to one of the places like the church or to G2 to come fill out the application, I've been and I'm willing to come meet either at the complex or at the unit or at the house or wherever. Meet the people where they are. That's what I'm here for. So I can leave my number. Anybody need to call me, I'll make it happen. I'll show up. So I thank you guys for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
With that, we do have a number of people listening in. Does anyone over there and listening in have anything that they want to say or any comments? It was like, yeah, please.
For Bremerton Housing Authority, is there a plan of communication in place as far as people that were selected or received vouchers? I know there was an email sent out with like a congratulation, and then it just fell off. There was no more interaction.
So we are pulling from that wait list, and we're pulling 50 applications a week. But that's a really good suggestion that because we have all your emails, and that's how we communicate with applicants is through email in the beginning. But we can most definitely put out an email blast just to say where we're at on the wait list. I take calls all day long. What number am I at on the wait list? And we look it up, and they do have numbers. But yeah, thank you for the suggestion. And we can definitely send something out as easy as tomorrow, just letting people know we're still working on it and you're on the list, and hang in there. So.
If there are any tenants still on the Zoom that are listening, communication is key. Communicate with your landlord, communicate with KCR. Make sure that your contact information is current. When it's time to fill out the application, try to have as many of the documents as possible, make it less work, and start the process of getting your need met. It just makes it so much easier, and communication is key. So that's it. Got another question.
For those, the ones that don't know, I guess this would be directed at Matt Houston. Is there a current process for tenants that are applying without cooperation from the landlord? Like if the landlord's not wanting to give up their social, or is there a current process in place for that?
Yeah, so we've been able to solve those most of the time right now. I know Deborah's advocated for a few that there's some open cases that we're trying to work on, but a lot of times we have been able to resolve those issues. So so I know we earlier talked about if the tenants aren't cooperating, but you're right. You bring up a good point, is we do have landlords that are not wanting to cooperate with the program. So the standard course of action right now is have the tenant still apply, right? Because the tenant can still fill out the complete Kipa pre-application, and if they come through an outreach organization or if they get pulled from the wait list, then basically the navigator, if the tenant would just need to tell the navigator, hey, I'm not getting anywhere with my landlord, and then the navigator and myself take over at that point. And so we try to then contact the landlord directly. So we would then try with mail, email, right, and explain the program. And there's been some reluctant landlords, and some wanted to come in person. Someone, didn't want to deal with me, but deal with our fiscal people directly. And that's fine. We've made a lot of different accommodations to try to get landlords to be comfortable to work with them. Because we know especially if you haven't done it before. I know you're all saying there's landlords that don't even know and haven't worked, with a program like this. I get it can be uncomfortable because you have to fill out a W-9, right? That could be your social security, could be your tax ID number. There's sensitive information. So we understand why there might be some legitimate hesitations. Most of the time we've been able to deal with that because we try to take over and advocate directly for them. So that's our standard process right now.
And I'll say it. I don't mind saying it.
All right, so I'm going to give everyone an applause. If you wouldn't mind, just applaud everyone for coming together today and having this conversation. It's so very important. I want to thank you all for coming. The Marvin Williams Center for hosting the event. Of course, Deborah Jackson. Karen Vargas, Christina Rourke from Kitsap Strong. The county, Kristen Jewell does a lot, more than you know, for sure. Definitely would like to thank Bremerton Housing Authority, Jill Stanton, Sarah, and Van Cleven. Lori, thank you. And Matt from KCR and all the work that they're doing, and all of our landlords, property owners, hotel owners, all of our tenants, and everyone that has helped to come and make this work. To continue having these conversations, you have to, subscribe, like, share. So go to YouTube, Marwan Cameron. You can find me on Facebook also, or Gather Together, Grow Together, our Facebook page. Last week we had Dr. Gibb Morrow from Kitsap Public Health, which was great. That actually had over 900 views. I assume this will probably have just as many, if not more. And as everyone said, they're looking forward to having, continue this conversation. So, we will be intentional about that. And if we want to have change, then we have to be the change. And as cliche as that sounds, as soon as we decide to do it, then we can do things that have never been done before. So power isn't given, power is taken. So let's take power, folks. I am Marwan Cameron. This is the Conduit. Until next time, we got about 20 seconds before we are dead. So if everyone could just stay seated till it dies, I will give you the signal. Until next time.